there's this
Sable
phrase,
Phoenix, remember, for 5 months. So Sable Phoenix sent in a 5-month super chat right here. Thank you so much, Sable, for being around. You're a huge part of this, incredible part of this.
Sable's awesome.
Yes. Sable says, yes, themes. I'm very interested to know what everyone thinks is the core underlying question at the core of the show, and nearly every character is. I've been sitting here trying to think about that as people were talking about that, because I was thinking, well, you've got the Vi Powder line, but then you also have the Jace line of the story. And so if this is done correctly, which it must be because we all love it, so it seems like it must have been done correctly. It seems like when you're trying to weave together different stories like this, that they're done thematically, that they're addressing the same core.
Yeah, intuitively, it feels like it is.
So we must be looking for something that is overarching the Undercity and the Undercity characters and the Overcity, or the Overcity characters.
What's it called?
Zahn and Piltover.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I even thought when I was writing the word Piltover, it was interesting because it sounds like built over, like I built over the poor district. I couldn't find a connection with Zahn, but Piltover seemed like a perfect name for that. The city above, and then the Undercity is Zahn, which will become, I guess, the nation of Zahn. But if I had to pick a core theme, it is absolutely, in my opinion, the relationship between Vi and Powder. The movie the show starts with them, and the show ends with them. And
I know, but whatever
That's a good
theme
question.
they're dealing with should be present in the other characters.
Yeah, he's saying, like, what's the underlying question? Like, if you were to say, like we said, change the theme, but like, how would you put that as a question that is being asked with each?
Well, what do you hold sacred at a time where nothing is sacred? You know, in conflicts where you have the rich living above, the poor living below, Shimmer is dehumanizing. You know, what do you hold sacred under these conditions, which are incredible? Well, honestly, they're terrible conditions in season 1, and I have a feeling that the war is going to begin in season 2, and it's going to get even worse. So, every character is trying to hold on to something sacred. You know, Jace has his vision, and he slowly starts to move in a different direction. Heimdinger has his legacy, and he starts getting pushed out. Vi thinks she can hold it together, and she does not. Jinx seems to be almost like a tragic character in this. Anyway,
there is a question. I don't know if they're all asking this, but I am recognizing a question that is certainly one of the fundamental ones here. And it has something to do with, when you are mistreated, like especially in like class different situations, or just from bullies, maybe, what is the correct response to that? I wonder if that's one of that's certainly one of the questions, because there's a lot of,
even Mel is abandoned by her mother.
Yeah, this is explored a lot in dialogue about like, you topsiders are all the same. Oh, well, we can still work something out. We're oil and water. That was that conversation. There's a lot about like talking about what should we do, and then the consequences, and then people make actions, and then there are consequences to those actions, and they're seeing like the complexity of, action and inaction, and then also just all of the hurt, all the different ways that all these people have been hurt by each other. And how do you solve that and have a sense of peace and a sense of like restitution without continuing the cycle of violence? And it seems to me like this overarching season is a tragic one, because they come close, like they come so close, to maybe making things better, but it's too late. It's too late. Like so many of the things that have gone wrong, the consequences and the ripple effects of them have already been set in motion. And so Jinx, sending that weapon up into the sky is that moment of it's too late, and the cycle of violence is just continuing. Like I feel like this whole thing is like people trying to not continue the cycle of violence. Some people are trying to stop the cycle of violence. Some people are trying to continue it because they feel like that's what they want. They think if I strike back, then it'll all be good. Then it's like, do you strike back, or does that just make it worse? And does it keep going? It seems to me like this story is saying, yes, if you strike back, things just keep getting worse and worse. But finding a solution and changing for the better is never it's not something that's as easy as let's just all hold hands and sing together. It's like, it's complicated, and there's costs to any choice that you make in a situation like that, which is so hard. And I think that's why it resonates, because it's so human. Like this is a fictional world, but we're all invested in it, because all of these moral situations that these characters are in are ones that like we as humans have experienced again and again and again and again and again for thousands of years.
Well, I agree. I think that holding something sacred or making moral decisions under violent conditions, these are this seems to be a theme that stretches through every episode in the show. Even Silco, he was being drowned when he was kind of reborn as Silco. Vander's the one that is trying not to be the violent one. He's trying to keep the peace, hold that steady.
You're right.
Although he had to change at the very end of his life. He had to use violence at the end.
Yeah. Well, all these characters do well. And I thought about, the root, and I've never played the video games. I knew nothing about them. I just watched the show. The show is based on combat, or the video game. It's based on combat.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if they decided, well, if we're going to tell a story about warriors and combat scenarios, what's their relationship to violence and their own moral compass on things? What is it they do think is sacred? And what I mean by that is morality. If you think something is sacred, then that should be the right. And then these opposite would be the wrong. And every character is trying to navigate that to some extent, I think.
Yeah, I was trying. I like this idea of it's either oppression or how do you respond when you've been done wrong?
Yeah,
because that is something that's present in both the Undercity and Piltover storylines. So even though you've got the rich people that are up in Piltover, Jace, people are doing him wrong. The guy who's who's Jace's accomplice with the
Victor.
Victor is experiencing that. What happens when you're done wrong? The woman who is the over counselor, she's been done wrong by her mother. So I think that we might be onto something there, that that all of these characters are dealing with something about what happens when you've been done wrong. How do you deal with that?
I just realized that's one of the reasons why I think I like this show so much. That's the exact same moral question at the core of my novel. It's the exact same one. Yeah.
Well, even like Jace, though, his issue is he brought hex tech out there, and it can be weaponized, and people know that. So there's like this dangerous other side. So, and what's interesting in hero's journey stories, when I write about the sacred fire, it's the idea that, and it's not the same usually in heroine-centric stories. It's a little different in the male warrior-oriented, I shouldn't even say male, just the warrior-oriented story. It tends to be about the use of force. The light side of the force versus the dark side of the force. Jedis are guardians of peace and justice. We're not soldiers. And Karate Kid, you can either become Miyagi-Do or you can become Cobra Kai. It's the idea of the ethics of force that seems to be heavily in the warrior genre. And what's interesting is structurally, this is absolutely a heroine's labyrinth structure, except the ethics seem to be more warrior oriented. So it really has elements from both the heroine's labyrinth and the hero's journey. And I would say more heroine's labyrinth, but it maintains a warrior ethos throughout in weird areas. Like even the scientist is like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Oppenheimer, but it has this idea that the scientist, the geeky tweed wearing, pencil pusher is about to pencil something in that's going to kill, 300,000 people in Nagasaki. His invention becomes destructive. And I think that's even a theme in Star Trek too. Scientists have always been pawns of the military, the Genesis torpedo. So it's weird to have these warrior ethos themes so heavily present in a heroine's labyrinth story. One that does do that is Kill Bill. Kill Bill has a little bit of that as well. She's clearly a warrior-oriented ethos character, but following a heroine's labyrinth model.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so much about society and like improving it or changing it, and like that feels very heroine typical as well, feminine, I suppose.
Let me look at a couple of.
Even though it is very much about violence. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Sable says Jinx's sacred fire is total freedom from all control. That's why Silco never tries to control her, no matter how wild she is. He thinks she's perfect. I remember that he says you're perfect, right? Because she sees her as Zaun incarnate. And then James says, I think Jinx wants validation. Oh, I think definitely yes. That's why
she wants validation, but so does Vi. She just doesn't need it as much, as overtly. I actually might disagree with you, Sable, when I'm running this through my mind. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm thinking this through out loud. I don't know if her sacred fire is... I think her sacred fire is the love of her sister. But that's been damaged. And it's been damaged in a way that seems irreconcilable. Silco never tries to replace her sister as someone who loves her and tries to control her with love. He's very much, believe it or not, this is usually a feature of the Beast as ally versus the Masked Minotaur, where the Beast honors the hero in sacred fire rather than trying to control it. So your point actually suggests that Silco does love her by not trying to control her. He actually is very consistent along those lines. And I think it's part of the thing that make us, the viewer, a little mixed with Silco. He seems to be very fair to Jinx, where the world has not, and yet he's supposed to be the villain. So, you know, I'm not
every single character is
but that's perfect.
Complex. It's so
What's
great.
that?
I was saying, just we'll come back to this, but just how every single character is complex and they have positive and negative traits is great.